But right now, we're going to start off with the Buffalo Bills. So how this is going to be structured is we're going to kind of take a quick look at free agency, a quick look at the draft, and then kind of just talk about the overall narrative surrounding the team going into this year. So if we look at them from a free agency standpoint, they brought in Chase Claypool, Matt Collins, Curtis Samuel, Marquez Valdes-Scantling, and lost Stephon Diggs, probably their biggest number one receiver. They also, as we get into the draft, brought in another receiver. But when you look at what the Bills brought in on free agency compared to what they lost, I mean, I think bringing back Epineza was big, but I don't know, Dobbs. Like, how do you feel about the free agency just in total? I think they lost more than they really gained, and which isn't necessarily the worst thing in the world, but this Bills team doesn't necessarily feel as strong as it was last year.
No, absolutely not. And I think, again, and that's the biggest thing about the narrative about this team is it's not just Stephon Diggs, but he's a big part of it. Because kind of like the way we saw Josh Allen's development, it was like, right when Stephon came is when really Josh Allen kind of made that ginormous leap. Now, I'm not on the camp like a lot of people that it was Stephon Diggs doing purely, kind of in that. That's how Stephon feels himself, clearly, as he's made it, he's verbalized throughout this offseason process. But look, I think the Bills are still going to be a competitive team. I do still think they're going to be a playoff team. But that's really the main narrative this year, aside from just, is this Bills core strong enough? Well, it's also, is Josh Allen that a very, very elite quarterback that a lot of people think he is? I think he is. And I think he's going to prove that this year. But now to your point, Hunter, about the, offseason additions, right? Look, all in all, I like what I like what they did through the draft, right? Like, I think they added some good pieces, and I think more than anything, they had a lot of picks and they did a lot of good things with them, filled out a lot of depth, right? But the draft is not, I don't think there's anybody that necessarily this year is going to make a ginormous impact on the team. I think it's going to be more guys that are down the road 2-3 seasons. And like you were saying about the free agent acquisitions, look, Curtis Samuel is a nice addition. Getting Mitch Trubisky back as your backup is a nice addition. But if we're being realistic here, none of these signings, none of these, additions are game changers this year. And so that's the big thing about the narrative, right? Is it's like, are the Bills still going to be that same team that we thought had a chance to win the Super Bowl? Or is it going to be kind of like a retooling process here?
I agree. And before we just get into overall narrative talk, one quick thing about the draft is they add Keon Coleman, right? And he's going to be your number one, I would imagine, here. And they add other players. Like, I like Dwayne Carter out of Duke. Not bad. But just players that really need to be developed. And when you're drafting at the back of the draft, because your team has been so good, that's the reality. A lot of these players are not going to be the top players. Keon Coleman's good. Cole Bishop, depending on how you feel about him, to play at safety. I do like the Cedric Van Pran pick to kind of replace that center after losing Mitch Morse, after trading away Ryan Bates. So overall in the draft, I don't know if you have anything to add, but it was just kind of like, okay, it was a decent draft. Like, not bad, not great. Like,
no, yeah, I think like everything you said, spot on. I think Keon Coleman this year is maybe, I don't want to say going to struggle a bit, but truly throwing him out at X right away, I just don't think we're going to see the best version of Keon Coleman this season. But again, that's why I say he's going to produce down the road. Dwayne Carter, I'm with you on that one. I think the two guys that we in this draft class, so that we have the biggest chance of seeing make like immediate impact like this year. Funny enough, it's actually their fourth and fifth round guys, like you just said. Ray Davis, running back out of Kentucky, but then also said Van Pran Granger. I think he's going to actually be an immediate impact starter on this team. Been saying that through the whole process. Kind of whoever got Van Pran was going to get a good starter. I didn't think he was going to fall away to the fifth round, but so that ended up working out for the Bills. But the point is, if your fourth and fifth round guys are the guys who are banking on making immediate impact this year, just maybe it's going to take a little bit longer to retool than maybe some people think for the Bills.
So going into our narrative is basically that, are the Bills at their core strong enough to compete at the high level that they have been these last couple years? And my answer is probably no. They finished out at 11-6 last year. They won their division. Miami was also 11-6. Now, we'll get to Miami. I don't necessarily think they're really the team I'm concerned about. If it's anybody, it's the Jets, if they're healthy, especially with the additions that they made. But with a new OC, I know Joe Brady was kind of there maybe midway. I think it was like midway through the season when they made the change, and then losing your number one receiver. I just think for the Bills, they're at a point where they have not been able to get over the hump. So changes have to be made. But if the changes that they make don't work out, I don't want to say that the coach is on the hot seat, that Sean McDermott's on the hot seat. But if these changes don't work, and the changes don't work next year, and the players aren't developing in the way that they should, I feel like real decisions are going to be starting to be made in Buffalo.
It's a great point you're making there, Hunter, because I haven't really thought about it a lot. But truthfully, Sean McDermott is one of those coaches where we have a chance to see, and you know how this goes, where there's a cycle once every, it happens. Well, it happens every year usually for a coach. But when a coach gets tired, they get a part of these cycles where they're a really good coach and they win and they make the playoffs for 4 or 5 years in a row, 6 years in a row, but they just can't get the job done. And as we always like to remind everybody, it's not about getting far. It's not about accomplishing something. The only accomplishment from the business perspective is to go win the whole thing, sell that winning merchandise, get that trophy, get that banner, get more people in the stadium, right? There's only one winner. There's 31 losers, right? So the reality is the Bills don't do it soon. Sean McDermott's going to be the next good coach thrown back into the cycle where if you're a team that all you feel like you're missing is the coach, all of a sudden Sean McDermott might be your guy. That's all hypothetical. Back to the reality of just now. I think the thing that scares me the most about the Bills, and I think you'd agree with this, is, look, when you lose Stephon Diggs, who was one of the big parts of the offense, you would like to be able to fall back on, well, you know what? It won't matter because Keon Coleman will be able to develop really well this year because our O-line is going to give Josh a lot of time. We have an elite O-line group, and we're not worried about it because the most important part of the team is set. But if you're the Bills, at least for me personally, I don't think you can say that about your O-line at all. I mean, realistically, look, Deion Dawkins is playing good ball, right? But outside of that, we're going to David Edwards, who only played 161 snaps last year. Connor McGovern, starting center, didn't have a good year. Cyrus Torrance, was a rookie. I'm not going to judge him that hard, but didn't have a good rookie year. So we need a big jump this year in the second year. And then on the right side, we got Spencer Brown, who's been playing good ball. But if we feel like realistically we only have 2 spots of the O-line for sure filled, that's not a good situation to be in if you want to be a Super Bowl contending team. That's just the reality.
Yeah, I think with the reasons that they struggled in past playoffs, this just doesn't give me the hype, that they had in those playoff runs. Like this, looking at this team, and I could be wrong, this may be the resurgence they need. It may be the rejuice that they need. But just looking at this Bills team, I wouldn't be surprised if they came in second in the division this year, strictly because of other teams in the division, but also the fact of their team is relatively young. Like they have a lot of guys under 30, which is good, but I just don't feel like, I think they took a step back to take 2 steps forward, which is fine. I just think it's going to be that type of year for the Bills.
No, and I think, you know what? I think history will treat us well on this one. And I'll even say it like this. If it doesn't, I'm fine with it because the Bills, as I always say, I'm always, me, I'm an underdog rooter. So if the Bills end up having a great year, I'm fine being wrong about this one. I hope I'm wrong about it. But I think realistically, we're taking the right approach looking at it.